All right, welcome to today on Microstrategy. So I'm going to talk about Microstrategy and just how I'm viewing it based on how I see the stock over the next 8 months or so, and why I'm super bullish on it. Now, obviously, we have a lot of people in the marketplace looking at what's happening. Bitcoin's been down, Microstrategy's down even more. And so, how would I look at this if I were looking to invest in Microstrategy at this point right now? I'm also going to give you my viewpoint of how I look at MicroStrategy, having invested in it way early in the year. So, regardless of the drops, I'm still up very, very high on MicroStrategy. So, I'm going to give you my perspective and the lens that I would look through in terms of like how I would actually see MicroStrategy and how I see it, to try and give some understanding to this stock and this company that owns Bitcoin, and very few people really understand what it is that they're doing. And so, if one doesn't understand what somebody's doing or understand a thing, of course, it would be easy to get rattled on that thing, particularly when you're investing money. So, I'm going to shed some light on why I'm more bullish about MicroStrategy and why I believe over the next 8 months, we're going to see the prices go even higher. And even though we're looking at a drop right now, you got to remember where MicroStrategy was early in 2024. Now, that's when I got in. So anybody who's making any investments or any decisions financially to do anything, you got to look at your own situation. You got to look at the time frame. You got to look at when you're getting in, all of that, and make the right decision for you. I'm just sharing my point of view. This is not financial advice. I just want to share with you how I see MicroStrategy, because I've done a lot of research on it. I've been following Michael Saylor since 2020, and I understand quite a bit about it. So, so here's the deal. So I got into MicroStrategy before the stock split. So I got in super early. My first real purchase, I would say, of a significant amount was back in February. And I bought multiple times in February, and I put quite a bit of money into MicroStrategy. My first share that I ever bought in MicroStrategy was in 2020. So I've obviously been following the stock of MicroStrategy for the last, I've been following Saylor for the last 5 years. I've been following the stock closely as well. And I've been very, very into this. And the reason I'm very, very into it is because I believe, number one, in Bitcoin. And then number two, I believe in what Saylor's doing with MicroStrategy. And here's why I believe in it. And I'm just going to break it down in as simple terms as possible so that anybody could understand this. Because oftentimes, as I sit there and I listen to, hundreds of hours that I've listened to on Saylor, in interviews that he's done, over 1,000 hours at least of different videos on Bitcoin and MicroStrategy as well. And so when I look at this, a lot of times people have a tough time understanding Bitcoin. And if they don't understand Bitcoin, they're going to have a really tough time understanding what Michael Saylor's doing. And as you're listening to Michael Saylor, his audience is not speaking to the general public per se. He speaks at a much higher level of finance than the basic education that most of us have in finance. So I want to break it down and make it simple the way that I see it, and why I'm invested in it, and why I'm bullish on it, and why I believe my prediction on MicroStrategy is, my bullish case is 1,000 to 1,300. My base case is I think we're easily going to hit 800. The height we hit this year in the after hours market was as high as 530. So to think that we're not going to get back there, I think is just, I don't believe that at all. And I believe where we're going is we're going to go up very high. We may see some dips over the next week or 2 weeks from my personal viewpoint. And it may go down a little bit lower. It could go down to 280, could go down to 270, could go down lower than that. But I believe with the new administration coming in, I believe with the plans that the new administration claims and says that they have for Bitcoin with a strategic Bitcoin reserve, I believe, Franklin Templeton just announced this morning that they believe that many other nations, several nations, are going to get involved in Bitcoin as their strategic Bitcoin reserve this year in 2025. And, they're a $1.5 trillion fund. So check it out, right? So there's many sources that are talking about strategic Bitcoin reserve. If the US does go in on it, there's going to be FOMO. A lot of people are going to fear missing out on this. And I think other nations will follow. I can't imagine that Trump is not going to do something related to the strategic Bitcoin reserve, because he talked about it at the Bitcoin conference. The percentage of people that own crypto in the US is super high. I don't know the recent statistics. When I looked at it over a year ago, it was about 1 in 5 people own crypto, and it must be more now. So he's not going to alienate the people. from my viewpoint. I think he's going to go in and he's going to announce something about the strategic Bitcoin reserve. I think he's going to make a move on it. I don't know how big it's going to be. Will they follow out on the million Bitcoin over the next 5 years, meaning buying 200,000 Bitcoin every year for the next 5 years, which would lead to 1 million Bitcoin, not $1 million, 1 million Bitcoin. Will they do that? I don't know. Okay. But if they do something and they make a move that's enough of a move, I believe we will see FOMO from other nations and other people will pour in. Not to mention that many corporations are adding Bitcoin to their balance sheet and it keeps growing and the number continues to grow. So we're talking about a totally different unit of time right now than we saw 4 years ago. Corporations with Bitcoin on their balance sheet, nations putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet. I'm very, very, very bullish for 2025. Very. So if I'm looking at MicroStrategy that has Bitcoin on their balance sheet, how am I actually looking at this from the viewpoint? And I want to break it down from how I see that I believe Saylor's looking at it, but I want to put it in simple terms of, how one could look at it. So we know that MicroStrategy is a stock. It's a company, right? That as of December 30th, I think the number is about 446,000 Bitcoin on the balance sheet, okay? So when you look at that, the company owns a lot of Bitcoin. They're the corporation that owns the most amount of Bitcoin on the planet, okay? No other corporation owns more, all right? So we look at MicroStrategy and they own a lot of Bitcoin. Now, if you were to look at a company, which they are, right, like an Apple and a Google, you're not valuing that company based on what they have sitting in their treasury. And what I mean by that is you wouldn't go in and look at Apple and you wouldn't look at Apple's the amount of money that's sitting in their treasury and be like, they have X sitting in the treasury, so they should be valued based on what's in their treasury. No, you're going to value Apple on multiple different factors. And so what Michael Saylor is saying, and I'm paraphrasing this, but their MicroStrategy is a company and they shouldn't be valued based on what they simply hold in their treasury, which a lot of people are going, well, they have Bitcoin and how are they going up more than Bitcoin, right? They hold this amount of Bitcoin in their treasury. This is how they should be valued. And they shouldn't be worth more than Bitcoin. But that's not how companies are valued, guys. And that's why MicroStrategy is completely unique, because they are a company that owns Bitcoin, and companies are valued differently. Okay. And many companies are valued as a standard way on the multiples of their earnings. So when you hear like a company, let's say this is a very simple example, they earned $1 million last year, right? And you often hear, you've probably heard this in the business world, that company's worth 10 times their earnings, right? We're going to value them at 10 times their earnings. We're going to value the company at 20 times their earnings. We're going to value the company at 15 times their earnings. So companies are being valued. One of the ways they're being valued, and a primary way, is based on their earnings. Okay? That's how companies are being valued. And I'm going to go through multiple other ways, just in a very general, simple way, okay? Of how companies are valued. So MicroStrategy is a company and they're being valued. They should be valued based on their earnings as well. Just like a Google is based on they're valued based on their earnings. An Apple is also based on their earnings. Now there's other factors like their product line and their innovation and how bullish people are about the future of the company and the sentiment of how people feel about it. But if you just break it down to brass tacks and you look at the value of Apple, they're not basing it based on what's sitting in their treasury. They're basing a valuation on Apple based on their earnings, and they're valuing them on multiples of their earnings, right? Now, I'm not. We could go look it up and take a look at what they're valued at based on their earnings. We could look at that. I'm not going to give that data right now to get into the weeds, but you could look it up, right? So, what MicroStrategy is saying is they have an earnings. And this is where people get confused, right? So when you see Michael Saylor, if you follow him, you should follow him on X. And he will say something to this nature. He will say, the Bitcoin yield of Bitcoin, our Bitcoin yield this year is 74%. So basically what he's saying, right? What he's saying is based on the Bitcoin that MicroStrategy holds, the earnings are 74%. Does this make sense? Based on the Bitcoin they hold, the earnings are 74%. Okay? So just like a company, is the company has earnings, and a company gets valued based on its earnings. It's one of the ways you do it, multiples of their earnings. So what MicroStrategy is looking at, and why I'm bullish about the company, is that if you look at their 74% yield on their Bitcoin in 2024, that's 74%, guys. 74%. That's a massive amount of growth. That's a massive amount of earnings. It's huge. And if you were to look up what the multiples in terms of their earnings, right? What the multiples should be based on their earnings. Like, let's say their earnings were $1 million. It's way more than that. Should they be valued at 10x their earnings, 20x their earnings, 30x their earnings, 40x their earnings? Could you make a case for them being valued at 40x their earnings? Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's what Michael Saylor, when he's talking about Bitcoin yield, is basically saying, like, right, regular companies make earnings. This is basically what our earnings are, right? That's the equivalent, you see? And so a lot of times when you're looking at, let me just plug this in real quick. When you're looking at and comparing apples to apples, it's very hard for, metaphor's sake, but it's very hard to say apples to apples and compare an Apple or a Google to a MicroStrategy. But you can in concept because they're both companies. The difference is that most people don't understand that MicroStrategy, they own Bitcoin. So when you think about like Apple's product line of like iPhones and computers and things like that, well, what is MicroStrategy's product line? In simple terms, is Bitcoin, right? They keep acquiring Bitcoin. And their Bitcoin that they're acquiring is producing a yield, or let's call it earnings. And so when you look at the Bitcoin yield over the last year, it's 74% as of yesterday. Today, they dropped a little bit, so maybe it's less. That's huge, massive, ridiculous growth. Like huge growth. So if you're looking to value, again, here's just the short of it. Here's why I'm bullish on MicroStrategy. If you're looking at why MicroStrategy is trading at a premium, right? Meaning they're trading at more. Okay. So the stock price is, when you're going to buy the stock price, you're like, why is the stock price high? Why did the stock price go up to $500 at one point? Right now it's lower. It's down at 287 or whatever. But why was it up at 500? And people are like, wow, it's trading so high. It's overvalued. It's overvalued. It's overvalued. I don't think it's overvalued. And if you listen to Michael Saylor's interviews, he's saying, no, it's not overvalued. And the reason being, if you look at it, the primary function of MicroStrategy, yeah, it's a software company, right? That was the original purpose of MicroStrategy. It's a software company. The software company makes $500 million a year, right? Okay, $500 million a year. So if you value the software company might be worth $1 billion. But their Bitcoin holdings are 446,000 Bitcoin, guys. So just do the math, all right? So the software company has such a little amount to do with the valuation of their company. The company should be valued based on their Bitcoin holdings and also the yield of the Bitcoin. And the yield of the Bitcoin, or the earnings, has been 74% this year in 2024, approximately, as of yesterday. So if you were to look at a company and be like, hey, a company's earnings are 20% growth this year, you'd be like, wow, 20% growth in a company? Okay, what multiple would you put on that company? Would you put a 10x multiple on the company? What would it be? Okay. And of course you would allow whoever values companies and how they're valued, you would allow them to go, okay, I'll get this 10, it could be a 10x, could be a 20x, could be a 30x, could be a 40x, what have you. But when you're looking at MicroStrategy, we're looking at 74%. So here's a couple factors to look at. Here's the lens of how I would put it into very, very simple terms to go. Number one, okay? So growth expectations, right? A simple general way of how companies might be valued. Growth expectations, right? Investors might believe that a company has strong growth potential. If they think the earnings will increase significantly in the future, a higher multiple could be justified. So when you look at MicroStrategy, does the marketplace think, and do investors, people like you and me who are investing in it, do we think that the earnings will increase significantly in the future? And if you look at a 4 to 5 year time horizon on MicroStrategy, the answer for me is definitely yes. Okay. Do I think we'll have a ride up over the next 8 months? And do I think we'll have a ride down? Yeah, we just had a ride up and we had a ride down. But again, I got in super early. So you need to be looking at this from the viewpoint of not investment advice, just understanding this first, because this is just education to understand what they're doing. Because if one doesn't understand what they're doing, if one doesn't have knowledge, how does one take responsibility for it? You can't, right? So you got to have knowledge first. So this is the whole purpose of me doing this, is just knowledge, okay? So the growth expectations, I think, are high, despite what the sentiment right now is in the marketplace. MicroStrategy has dropped a whole bit. You'll see videos saying, hey, there's a huge crash on MicroStrategy. But if you really understand Bitcoin and you really understand Saylor and what he's doing as the founder of MicroStrategy, and you really understand what MicroStrategy is doing in terms of acquiring Bitcoin as their primary strategy and their sole strategy, then you would understand that the 4 to 5 year outlook is huge. And if you do believe that Bitcoin is going to $1 million at some point, whether you believe it's going to be $1 million Bitcoin 5 years from now, 6 years from now, 7 years from now, 8 years from now, we will hit $1 million Bitcoin. Okay. 9 years from now, 10 years from now, what do you think it's going to be? Okay. So MicroStrategy, if they keep acquiring Bitcoin and Bitcoin keeps going up, then the company valuation is going to continue to go up over time. Now, what does that mean? As an investor, will I hold all of my MicroStrategy through the ups and downs? No. In 8 months, I will look at, or 6 months, based on what happens next year, I will look at it. Will I continue to hold Bitcoin? Yes. Will I take some profits here and there? Yeah. Okay. So you got to look at it from that perspective of like, okay, what are they really doing? MicroStrategy. The second thing is market position, right? If you're going to value a company, you can look at market position. Is the company a leader in its industry, and does it have a competitive advantage? Okay. So we just talked about earnings of MicroStrategy. Okay. Based on their Bitcoin holdings, they have a 74% yield. So when you're comparing apples to apples, any company, you're going to look at their earnings, right? And you're going to value them based on their earnings. And if their earnings growth is good and their overall earnings is healthy, they're probably going to get a higher multiple in terms of the valuation of the company, taking into consideration these additional points that I'm sharing as well, right? So that's how one would basically value a company. So we're bullish on Apple because they have an innovative product line. So the market position of Apple is a leader. If you look at MicroStrategy, the market position of MicroStrategy, they are a leader in the industry, period, because they own the most amount of Bitcoin. Okay. So we're not talking about a standard company here that's producing iPhones or computers. We're talking about a company whose product basically is Bitcoin. Make sense? Okay. So are they a leader in the industry? Yeah, because they own the most Bitcoin out of any corporation out there. They have the most amount of Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So the market position is hugely strong. Now, let's look at stability, okay? Maybe they don't check this box, okay? In the short term, they're not going to check this box unless you're comfortable with volatility. Because we know that the S&P 500, the volatility is at a 15. Bitcoin, the volatility is about a 60, and MicroStrategy is a 90. So MicroStrategy is going to be way more volatile than Bitcoin. Bitcoin is going to be way more volatile than the S&P 500. But if you look at the S&P 500, you're going to get a 14% rate of return over about a 4 or 5 year period. This year it was 26%, but over 4 to 5 years period, you're going to get a 14%. Okay, so if the money supply is going up on a good year by 7% and you're earning 14%, your net is 7%. Okay, and the money supply has been going up by 7% a year since the beginning of time, since there was a dollar. Okay. Since the beginning of time, we had a dollar every year. The U.S. prints more money, about 6.57% per year. Okay. So it goes up by 7%. You earn 14%. That means your net money that you're actually making is 7%. On years like COVID or years where the money printing is higher, it might be 10% of money supply that's being increased. So if the supply of money is going up by 10% and you're earning 14% in the S&P, you're really only earning 4%. So we like the volatility because to survive in this crazy freaking world right now where things are expensive, right? Where the amount of debt that even the US has and other countries has is extraordinary. Do you think we're in volatile times? Yeah. So to outpace what's going on with the printing of money, inflation, and the some degree economic turmoil that we've seen over the last several years, you have to be in assets, in my opinion. This is not financial advice. I'm going to be in assets, and I am in assets that have the high degree of volatility because I want the volatility, because I want the returns. So when I'm invested in assets like MicroStrategy and Bitcoin, I'm used to it going up 40, 50% and coming down. I've lived through this, okay? Now, because I believe and know that we still are in a bull market, and I believe over the next 8 months, we're going to see price melt. We're going to melt faces with prices in Bitcoin. We're going to melt faces with prices in MicroStrategy. That's what I believe, okay? Will it happen? I believe and know that it's going to happen. Will it happen? We'll see what will happen for the rest of the world and the economy, and we'll see if I'm right. Okay. But that's what I believe. So that's what I'm placing my investment choices in. Okay. And I'm betting on the volatility because I don't want to be sitting there on an asset that's going up 7% a year when the money supply is going up by 7% a year. I'm making zero. I'm not going to do that. Okay. So when we look at MicroStrategy's genius of what they're doing and the valuation of their company and why the company should be valued higher than what it is right now. Yes, higher. Okay. Should be valued higher than what it is. The stock price should be higher than what it is right now. This is my personal viewpoint, right? So when we check the box, I'm going through 5 points on how a company might be valued. On stability in the short term, no, it's volatile. No. So does it check that box of stability? No, I would not say in the short term it checks the box of stability. No, I don't think so. If you're looking to get in, I'm like, hey, I'm going to invest in MicroStrategy today, and I want to get out in a month. We have no idea what's going to happen in a month. We don't know. My bet is over the next 8 months. And again, remember, I got in early 2024. So by the time this bull market comes to an end, which I think is going to be around August or September next year, okay, I will have been in MicroStrategy for over a year and a half. Okay, so my time horizon on the stock is a year and a half to even look and consider taking profits on it. And then from there, my time horizon of how much I'm going to hold long-term depends based on what's going on in the economic environment. Does Trump put in a strategic Bitcoin reserve, and are they aggressive with it? Do other nation states follow? Do corporations continue to adopt Bitcoin on their balance sheet? And if those things continue to happen and they continue to happen at a high velocity, I'm going to determine how much MicroStrategy I'm going to hold beyond that period of the 18 months, meaning getting in February of 2024, early this year, and holding it to probably around August or September of next year and taking profits somewhere along the way. Okay. So is it stable in the short run? No. But if you're looking at it from a 4 to 5 year period, do I think it's stable over that time period? Absolutely. Because I believe that Bitcoin is stable over that time period. And I believe what Michael Saylor is doing is an innovator. Okay. And he's a genius. And having Bitcoin on his balance sheet is the smartest thing that I think that any company has ever done. I just believe it. So stability short term? No, I wouldn't check that box. Long term, over 4 to 5 years, I would check that box. Future opportunities. Okay. Another way to look at the valuation of a company. If you're going to look at MicroStrategy, look at future opportunities. A company entering new markets or launching innovative products, right? So is MicroStrategy entering new markets? Are they innovative in what they're doing? Absolutely. They're innovative in what they're doing. In fact, they're offering up financial products in the marketplace. Simple. They're offering up innovative financial new products. How is that the case? They hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet, and multiple institutions, could be individuals, are coming to them and saying, hey, yeah, we'll loan you some money. Here's $1 billion. We'll loan you some money. And they're getting loaned money at 0% in some cases, guys. So when you look at MicroStrategy, they're betting that over a 4 to 5 year period, Bitcoin is actually going to go up over that 4 to 5 year period. That's the bet. And if you look at Bitcoin over any 4 year period, Bitcoin has gone up. Okay. And so when you look at that, you're looking at a bet on an asset like Bitcoin, call it digital gold, right? So they're betting on Bitcoin. They're holding on their balance sheet. They're betting that's going to go up over a 4 year period. That's going to go up over an 8 year period, 10 years, 50 years, 100 years. That's their strategy. They're sticking to it. And that's why he says he's never going to sell his Bitcoin. Okay. And so one of the ways they're accumulating money with what they're doing is they're literally going into the marketplace. And they're like, hey, loan me some money. Companies will loan them money. And people loan them money. And they're loaning them money sometimes at a 0% interest rate. So let's say they loan them $1 billion. Hey, here's $1 billion. Wouldn't you like for somebody to give you $1 billion? Here's $1 billion, right? And MicroStrategy is going, no, we're not going to pay you interest right now on some of the loans. Some of the loans have low interest rates. We're not going to pay you interest right now. In fact, 4 to 5 years later, as our stock price goes up, as our value of our Bitcoin goes up, you can then convert the value of the money that you loaned us into stock. And that's how you'll make your profit. And that's the basic deal that they're doing with companies that are loaning them money, or institutions that are loaning them money, or people that are loaning them money. Make sense? And then, of course, they're just issuing. Michael Saylor said in his video the other day, he's like, MicroStrategy is kind of like we're issuing our own currency. We issue stock, people give us money, we buy Bitcoin. So the strategy of what they're doing is very simple. But the point that I wanted to make today on today's video that I haven't made yet is what they're doing is basically, here's what I believe Saylor is saying, okay? To paraphrase it and make it simple. You would value a company like Google or Apple, and you would value them based on some of the things I just said, right? You also value based on investor sentiment, right? So, how investors are feeling about things at the time, basically investor sentiment, okay? Are investors optimistic? Are investors inclined to pay higher amounts for the stock price? And we've seen that with MicroStrategy over the last year, that investors are totally willing to pay higher amounts for the stock price. It's one of the main reasons why the stock price is going up as well, okay? So we know that investor sentiment, for people who understand it, the investor sentiment is high. For people who don't, it's low, and they don't have the knowledge and understanding of it, so their sentiment towards it is not good. But there's billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars flowing into MicroStrategy. Okay? So much so that the company, they are now on the QQQ. So if you look up the QQQ, that's based on the NASDAQ 100, and it's an index fund that mirrors the top 100 companies in the world, top 100 companies in a certain sector. And so they're on the QQQ now, which means billions of dollars from that fund are flowing into MicroStrategy alone. So there's many things that have happened with MicroStrategy this year that one would look at it if they knew the data and say, wow, my feeling and my sentiment towards MicroStrategy and what they're doing is high, is optimistic. That's my feeling towards it. And if I'm going to look at them like a regular company, which they need to be looked at as a traditional company in terms of how they're valued, they should be valued based on multiples of earnings from my perspective. Okay, just like you value an Apple. You don't look at Apple and go, "Hey, Apple, you got this much sitting in your treasury. We're just gonna value your company based on what's in your treasury." In Apple's treasury is probably cash and T-bills. In MicroStrategy's treasury is Bitcoin. But they're not being valued solely on the Bitcoin, nor should they. And when you look at the Bitcoin yield, right? When Michael Saylor says Bitcoin yield, it's 74% over this year. So how do you value then this company? 74%. That's huge. Okay. Now you could look at the total opposite side of this, and you could go, well, what happens in 2025 if we run straight up and then we run straight down? What is the Bitcoin yield going to be then? So you could argue that case too. And all I'm saying is I'm simply looking at MicroStrategy. I'm making my point of view and my judgments for how much of it I'm going to hold in the long term. And I'm looking at it for the next 8 months of how much I'm going to hold, because I will take some profits at some point based on what's happening in the environment. Okay. Now, mind you, I'm not saying invest in it. I'm not saying this is the right choice for you. I'm saying just understand it. And again, full disclosure, I got back in February. It was my first real purchase was in 2020, but my first major purchase was in February of 2024 of MicroStrategy. My first Bitcoin buys were back in 2018, and my first buys were at a $3,000 price point. Okay. So I've been in Bitcoin for a while. I've been following Saylor since 2020. And I understand what he's doing, and I understand Bitcoin. Now, would I invest in MicroStrategy if I knew nothing about Bitcoin? Absolutely not. Not in a million years. Would I invest in Bitcoin if I didn't know about it? If I didn't know about it, I'd put a little bit of money in it to learn about it, because there's so much talk about what's going on in Bitcoin right now. Like you can't turn your head the other way. You just can't. You got to know something about it. Okay. So I would first learn about Bitcoin, number one. And then second, once I fully understood Bitcoin, I would also start studying MicroStrategy, and I would learn what they're doing. I believe that it is the most genius financial move made by any company and any individual in the last 100 years. That's what I believe about what MicroStrategy is doing. Okay. Could in 4 or 5 years or 10 years, could like all hell break loose? Could something wild happen on MicroStrategy where they totally bomb and they totally go out of business? I don't know. I can't predict the future. Is anything possible? Sure. Right. I remember watching an interview recently with Michael Saylor, and he said, yeah, if Bitcoin goes down to $1, we'll just buy up all the Bitcoin. So do I think Bitcoin will ever go down to $1? No. Do I think Bitcoin will go down below 70,000 again? I don't think so. I think the lowest Bitcoin could go at this point would be 60,000. So that's my personal viewpoint on it. Do I think MicroStrategy is going to the moon next year in 2025? I do. And have I held my MicroStrategy despite what's going up and going down? Yes, with a little caveat, which I'll talk about in the next video. I also hold a derivative of MicroStrategy called MSTU, which is basically a 2x of MicroStrategy. But I do not recommend getting involved in it. First, know about Bitcoin. First, know about MicroStrategy. When you learn about it, you can look up MSTU if you just want to get educated, which is a 2x on MicroStrategy. Super risky, leverage, need to know what you're doing, need to understand the risks. But I have some money in that as well, okay? But my main positions are Bitcoin. My main positions are MicroStrategy. Super bullish. So again, a recap of today's video. Here's the 5 points of why I believe MicroStrategy is completely undervalued right now. Here's the 5 bullet points. I'm going to go through them again, okay? Number 1, in valuing a company, okay? And I'm not an expert in valuation. I have some knowledge on it, and I'm giving you the knowledge I have in very, very simple terms. My goal is on this channel to make things very simple and put them in very simple terms, okay? Okay, so number 1, here's my first case in point for why MicroStrategy, I believe, is going to go up much, much higher, okay? Number 1, it is a company, okay? And it owns Bitcoin, okay? So the fact that the majority of the valuation of MicroStrategy is due to their holdings in Bitcoin, their underlying software company does $500 million a year. It might be worth $1 billion, that company, okay? MicroStrategy is valued around $100 billion right now. Do I think it's undervalued in terms of its current valuation? I absolutely think it is. Okay. And here's why. All right. The yield on the Bitcoin that MicroStrategy holds. Okay. If you've seen Michael Saylor's post, it says 74% this year. That was as of yesterday, December 30th. The stock has dropped a little bit today. It might be lower. Okay. 74% this year as of yesterday. So when you look at them as a company and their product basically is Bitcoin, okay? If we make a metaphor, right, or an analogy, Apple's product, iPhones, computers, MicroStrategy's product, Bitcoin, right? So when we look at this and we go, okay, MicroStrategy produced a 74% yield on the Bitcoin this year. That is massive, massive, massive yield. You go look at another company and go, wow, their earnings this year were 20%. They had a 20% growth, this year, and their earnings went up by 20%. So instead of their earnings being 100 million, as a very simple example, their earnings are 120 million. This is just a general example, has nothing to do with MicroStrategy, okay? So wait, last year they earned 100 million, they're up 20% this year, 120 million. So you look at a regular company and you would go, hey, their earnings are X. Their earnings went up by 20%. We're going to put a valuation on the company based on their earnings, number 1. So why should MicroStrategy be treated any different? Okay. We're not looking at earnings on iPhones or earnings based on selling computers, or if we're Google, we're not looking at earnings based on their products and services that they're selling. We're looking at MicroStrategy as a company, and we should be basing their valuation on the earnings that MicroStrategy is producing. And what are they producing in the marketplace? They're buying Bitcoin. That's their product, okay? To for a simple analogy, that's their product, all right? And again, this is an analogy, okay? So we should be valuing based on their earnings, 74% yield. Look at other companies. What has their growth rate been? Okay, MicroStrategy, 74% yield on their Bitcoin this year. That's pretty damn big. Second, growth expectations. Do we think Bitcoin is going to be an asset that's around over the next 4 or 5 years? Well, U.S. Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, if they take it on and Trump is bullish on it and he does it, and they get the votes on it, if they do it, then we're going to be even more bullish on Bitcoin because nation states will follow. Number of companies adding Bitcoin to their balance sheet keeps growing, which means millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars are pouring into Bitcoin every single day. All right. MicroStrategy company owns Bitcoin. If you're bullish for Bitcoin and you see all the things that are happening with Bitcoin, are we bullish that MicroStrategy owns Bitcoin? Are we bullish on MicroStrategy continuing to go up in value? I am. Okay. So my growth expectations as I'm looking at this company are high. Second, Market position. So there's another lens to look through in terms of valuing a company. Are they a leader in their industry? Do they have a competitive advantage? 100% they have a competitive advantage. Will any company come close to owning the amount of Bitcoin that MicroStrategy owns? Probably not. They own 1.5% of the supply approximately. Will other companies come close to owning that amount? I don't think so. So will they continue to be the leader as a company? Will they continue to have the competitive advantage as a company? Yes. So they have a huge competitive advantage. And one of the reasons they have a huge competitive advantage is because they got in early. They got in early. They started buying Bitcoin back in 2020. So they got in way early. All right. Third thing we looked at was stability. Is it a stable company? In the short term, as you can see, and you look at the stability from my viewpoint, no, it's up and down. And it's all over the place. Okay. So it depends how you're basing your decisions in terms of stability. If you look at day to day, hell no. It's up, down, it's all over the place. If you look at week to week, hell no. It's all over the place. If you look at month to month, hell no, right? But if I look at the investment over the last year, which is approximately how long I've been in it, and I look at the stability, I look at my growth and my stability and the performance, and it's been extraordinary. And as I look at it over an 18-month time horizon since I first invested back in February, yes, am I bullish in the long-term growth of MicroStrategy over the next 18 months? Yes. Does it mean I'm going to hold all my MicroStrategy and watch it go all the way up and potentially go way down? I'm not going to hold all of it. I'm going to sell some of it potentially, depending on what happens with what the U.S. does with the strategic Bitcoin reserve, other nations that follow, companies continuing to add Bitcoin to their balance sheet, and overall just what's happening as we look at the economy in 2025 and the new president comes in. I'm going to look at all those factors, okay? So stability, short term, no. Doesn't check that box, okay? Future opportunities. Are they launching innovative products? Yeah. If you look at MicroStrategy and you hear Michael Saylor, go watch some interviews, he'll talk about their financial products. So we can go down a rabbit hole on that, but are they offering financial products in the marketplace? Absolutely they are. So do they have innovative financial products? Absolutely they do. So they check that box for future opportunities. And let's not forget, just as a general overall, just like sentiment of do I believe that Bitcoin is the best asset to be involved in over the next 5 to 10 years? I do. And do I believe that Bitcoin is digital gold? I do. And do I believe in Bitcoin? I do. So when I look at the future growth potential of MicroStrategy that owns Bitcoin, I believe that they have a very sound strategy. I believe he knows what he's doing. We're talking about the founder of this company that is an MIT graduate. He's an astrophysicist. The guy's brilliant. Okay. And so he's smart. And I believe that he's calculated, and I believe he knows what he's doing. And based on what he's doing and what I see that MicroStrategy is doing, I believe in it. I understand it. And I believe wholeheartedly that they're making the right choice. Okay. Does that trade the fact that there's volatility? Heck no. There's massive volatility. And again, to recap, S&P 500 might be about a 15 volatility. Bitcoin is 60 volatility. MicroStrategy 90. So the volatility is massive. But that gives us an opportunity for those of us who like the volatility to be in it and get the types of returns that we want, okay, while believing in the sound principles of the company, okay? So, and let's not forget, like, if you're looking at Bitcoin from a long-term perspective, do you believe in Bitcoin? Okay? First, do you believe in Bitcoin? If you don't, then clearly you're not going to buy MicroStrategy at all. You're not going to pay attention to it. You're going to think it's the craziest thing in the world, okay? So that's another component that I would look at, understand Bitcoin first. But do I believe in Bitcoin? Yes. Do I believe nation states are going to fall in 2025? I think we'll have other nations adding Bitcoin as a strategic reserve. El Salvador has it already. Do I believe other nations have to? I believe absolutely they have to. If you look at inflation rates in Argentina, Venezuela, we're talking about 100% inflation rates. So countries like that, they don't have a choice. And you look at the dollar is still relatively strong and definitely strong comparatively to other nations, right? But when you look at other countries, guys, I mean, we have countries that have 100% inflation. What other option do they have? Okay. And also, we know long-term, keeping your money in the dollar, if you keep your money in the dollar over the next 100 years, you're going to lose 97% of your value holding the dollar. You're not going to store your money in the dollar. Okay. Because we print more dollar every single year. We print more money every single year. There's no way you're storing your money in the dollar. Long-term is the dumbest thing you could do. Okay. And you're also not going to put your money in bonds because like the money supply is going up by 6.5% a year. Bonds are doing what, 5% a year, right? So depending on the time frame or what bonds you're investing in, what are corporate bonds at 5% right now, right? If you're investing in government bonds, you might be at 4%, and the money supply is going up by 7%. You got to make 7% just to stay ahead, or just to stay even. You got to make 7%. So bonds are not going to be the future choice. Is gold going to be the future choice? No, I don't think gold's going to be the future choice. Do I think it's the right choice for some people? Sure. But if we look at a digital technology and we look at a digital future and we look at what's our other option, Bitcoin is the option. If you're looking at a digital money and a digital future, what's your other option? Are you going to wait for some government to create a digital currency that's controlled by a government that can print more currency, or just all of a sudden issue more digital currency? No, you don't want that. Why you love Bitcoin, or why you would love Bitcoin, is really simple, because there's only 21 million. It's scarce and it's finite. There will never be more than 21 million. So we love the fact that it's decentralized. And so when I'm looking at that, and I'm looking at a company like MicroStrategy that owns Bitcoin, and they own an asset like this, I'm super bullish on the company as well. So that's what I have to say about how I would look at MicroStrategy. I would look at them as a company, and I would look at how companies are valued. Okay, that's how I would look at it. You would not just look at it through the lens of they're buying Bitcoin and they should be valued based on the amount of Bitcoin they have in their treasury. That's not the right way to look at it. And when the new accounting rules come out called FASB, if you look it up, it's called FASB. I think it's called Fair Accounting Standard. Look it up, but it's FASB. So it's a Fair Accounting Standards Board. Okay. So with the new accounting rules coming out on how Bitcoin's actually going to be accounted for on the balance sheet of MicroStrategy, that's going to change. And I think that's happening in February. So the way that it was accounted for on their balance sheet before was based on the price that they bought it at, the cost basis of Bitcoin. So now with the new accounting rules, it's going to be based on the current market price. So when those accounting rules come out, I think we're going to see an even higher valuation on MicroStrategy, because up to this point, they're basing it based on the cost basis of MicroStrategy. And they're basing that based on their accounting rules for how MicroStrategy holds Bitcoin on their books, is based on the cost basis versus the actual market price. And the actual market price, if we look right now, is probably around 92,000 or what have you, right? So the accounting rules are changing coming out in February of how they're actually going to account for the Bitcoin that MicroStrategy is holding on their balance sheet. And then, as I was just saying, we don't value MicroStrategy just on the money that they're holding on their balance sheet in Bitcoin. We don't value them based on that. We're going to value them like a traditional company would be valued, just like an Apple, just like a Google, just like a Tesla. So there's going to be multiples of that company. It's going to be worth multiples to their earnings every single year. Okay. So what multiple would you place on it? Go do your research. Check it out. Okay. But what I believe based on that and what we're looking at right now, I believe they're undervalued. That's my point. Okay. So why do I think the stock's going to go up in 2025 based on many of the points that I just shared with you? Okay. And I think we're going to see a rocket ride in 2025. I do not think that the bull run's over. I do not think that we're in a bear market. I think that Bitcoin's dropped from 108,000 down to 92,000. If you've lived through these bull markets and bear markets before, you know that Bitcoin's dropped a lot more than that before. So an 18% drop is not a huge deal if you've been in Bitcoin for a while. If you haven't been in Bitcoin for a while, it's a huge deal to people. Okay. So take a look. Go take a look and study up on Bitcoin. See what you think. If you like Bitcoin, do what you want with it. Take a look at MicroStrategy after you studied up on Bitcoin. See what you think about that. And I would just watch them and get educated on them over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. I think we're going to see some big things in 2025. I'm super bullish about new management. New management is coming in. The January 19th or January 20th. We'll see what Trump does. We'll see if we get a strategic Bitcoin reserve. We'll see if corporations keep adding Bitcoin to their balance sheet. And if they do, and if both of those happen, I think we're going to see a rocket ride. Okay. All right, guys. Hope you're doing well. And it's been a fun 2024. Amazing. What am I bullish about in 2024? Bitcoin, MicroStrategy, Tesla. Okay. And I can say, just if you're looking and you're brand new and you have not bought Bitcoin, I'm not recommending at all that you buy it, because I'm not giving financial advice. I'm just saying go get educated on it. Mind you, my first Bitcoin that I ever bought was at $3,000. Okay. I've been invested in Bitcoin since 2018. Heck, I owned mining equipment at one point in 2018. All right. I even mined some Bitcoin, and some of the Bitcoin that I have right now as a result of mining Bitcoin. And I didn't even know what mining was at the time. I just made an investment in a company that was doing some mining, and I owned some mining equipment. I owned 50% of the deal. Okay. So I have been in this game for a little while. Some people have been in longer. I love it. I think it's exciting. I think what's happening in the future for the economy, for people who hold Bitcoin, I think it's going to be an exciting future. And for people who don't, I'm sure there's other ways to create an exciting future, like a business that you're excited about. I mean, I own multiple companies myself. So if you're excited about a business that you own, great. That could be an amazing 2025. Maybe you're in real estate. That's not my forte. I know quite a few people out there that are in real estate and they crush it. So if you're in real estate, maybe you're crushing it through that. Maybe gold is the right thing for you. You got to decide what's the right fit for you. I just know for me, I'm like, dude, how could I not be in Bitcoin? How could I not be in MicroStrategy? That's just my viewpoint. And the more I understood it, I remember making the phone call to my brother in 2019 when things were starting to happen with COVID. And I remember making the phone call to my brother, and I had been in Bitcoin earlier in 2018, as I said, but I remember making the phone call to him, and Bitcoin was at about 7,000. I picked up the phone. I go, bro, based on what I'm seeing right now, and what's happening in the economy and with the printing of money, we need to load up on Bitcoin. And my brother and I both, we got involved in 2019 together. Again, I owned it earlier than that. And in 2019, we're going in hard on this thing. And so in doing that, I learned a lot about it. Clearly, you can make some mistakes, so to speak, and feel like you bought the top or you bought too high. But even if you bought the top in 2020 and you felt like you made a mistake and you held it, the top was what, 60, 67, 69,000 then? And so now look where we're at. We're at 92,000. Okay. So I'm super bullish about it. I will be holding on to my Bitcoin. Am I a person who believes that I will never take profits in everything? No, I'm not. I am a person who will take some profits here and there on stuff. And we'll look at what happens in 2025. And at the end of the day, everybody has their own choices. People get to do what they want to do. And I think just the smart thing to do going into the new year is to get as much education and knowledge as possible about Bitcoin, as much education and knowledge as possible about MicroStrategy. I also own Tesla. I first started investing in Tesla in 2017. Do I think that Elon's a genius? Absolutely. And I also like to invest in people that I believe in. Do I believe in Michael Saylor? Yeah. Do I believe in Elon? Absolutely. Do I believe in Bitcoin as a decentralized network? Absolutely. So do these certain things align with my beliefs? Do they align with my values? Absolutely. Do I believe we're in a digital age? Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm also, in online marketing. So I got involved in online marketing around 2013. So as a business owner, I own a whole entire company that's online. And, prior to getting involved in online marketing, I was a speaker. I was out in the physical world, speaking on stages all the time. And I made my living speaking. And when 2013, I started to see the shift heavily to where businesses were moving online. And as I saw the wave of businesses moving online, I'm like, there's no way I'm getting left behind on this. And in 2013, when it came to online marketing, I thought I was the dumbest guy in the room. Okay. But I was like, I'm going to learn this thing. I'm going to figure out the online game of business back in 2013. Right. And it took me several years to kind of figure out the game and master it. And right around 2016, I started to figure it out in terms of online marketing and online business. And I figured it out in 2016. And then we started to grow and grow and grow. And, as a result of online marketing, approximately about 50 million or so in sales, close to 50 million in sales that we've generated. The majority of it has come from online marketing. So I wanted to learn online marketing in 2013. Took me about 2016 to 16 to get a hang of it. I was like, I can't see this physical world of like going out and shaking hands all the time. And I was speaking on stages all the time, which I still do. I can't see this physical world of going places and doing things as the future. If online I can press a button and have something launched in seconds, like why would I not build my business online? So when I saw this in 2013, I started moving my entire business online. And when COVID hit in 2019, my business wasn't affected at all that year. In fact, my business went up by 17% that year. because I had already moved 95% of my business online. So as you start to see these digital waves that are happening in the world, I was online way before COVID hit and people started doing Zoom calls. We were running a virtual company. We started running a virtual company back in 2015, 16. So way before COVID, we were running a virtual company and we were running a digital company. And so as I looked at this, I'm like, power, speed, flexibility. COVID hit. It all of a sudden reinforced that I made the right choice about building an online business. And so I was like, this was the right choice. And then as I started to look at where is the future going online, where's the future of the digital world going, and I saw that COVID hit, and I was like, wow, we need an alternative choice for investing. And we printed what? From 2020 to 2022, we printed 42% more money. And somebody was sharing a stat the other day that 1 out of every $4 that's ever been in existence has been printed in the last 4 years. That's a shitload of dollars, man. 1 out of every $4 that's been printed in the entire existence of the US has been printed in the last 4 years. So when I started to look at that, I'm like, okay, I was right about switching my entire business to online in 2015, 2016. When COVID hit, I started looking at Bitcoin. I started looking at the digital world, which I was familiar with already. I'm like, I'm right about this. I know I'm right about this when I was doing this in 2019. And I was 100% convicted about it in 2019. And I'm just as convicted in 2024. Funny enough, right about this time, right? Right about in 2019, when we were kind of starting to go into the bull market. Well, we were already in the bull market a little bit, but we're starting to see the prices go up. We're starting to see in like October, November 2019, we started to see like a $7,000 Bitcoin. I remember calling my brother, it's a 7,000. We saw 8,000. Then we saw 9,000. Then I was telling friends at my church when it was at 11,000, I was like, I can't believe you're not in this when it was at $11,000. I can't believe you're not doing this, right? And it was just a few of us, few of my friends, right? And I was right about that in 2019. And now in 2024, as we're coming in and we're going into 2025, and do I think we're at the top with Bitcoin? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Do I think that MicroStrategy has seen its last day where it's going to be sitting at 270 in 2025? Absolutely not. I think we're going to see MicroStrategy going to at least 800 in 2025, and my bullish case is 1,000 to 1,300. Okay? So will I be right about this? I think I will be. Is it volatile as hell in the short run? Absolutely, guys. So again, if you're not used to the volatility, get your feet wet by just getting educated on it. Just get knowledge on it, because one who has knowledge on it has more certainty. My friend and I were at dinner last night, and as the market was going down, I'm not going to share what I did. I'll do it on another live stream. But we were sitting having dinner last night. He's heavy into Bitcoin as well. And he's also heavy into MicroStrategy, and we were talking about what is the move with the market dropping right now, so we can pick up more gains and buy at a lower level, right? A lower price point. And he gave me a really good idea, and so this morning I started layering into that idea, and layering in because the prices are low. Okay, now comparatively, am I buying now at low prices to what I bought at? No way, right? I bought MicroStrategy before the stock split, guys. So am I still buying when I'm buying? And I'm not buying MicroStrategy. I'll share with you what I'm buying on a live stream in the new year. But I'll share with you in simple terms to break it down. But I layered in this morning and put some of my money into buying this stock. And I'm like, okay, I'm fully confident in buying this. I'm fully confident in what's going to happen over the next 8 months with this. And so I'm going to layer in some of my profits because I'm in profits, right? I'm in profits. Right. I know some people who might have bought MicroStrategy high and they're sitting in losses right now, or they bought Bitcoin. I know friends that bought Bitcoin at 100,000. Like, oh my God, it's down to 93,000. What do we do? Right. I'm sitting in profits, all profits. Okay. So I take a little of my profits and I'm layering into something else for when 2025, I think we're going to go parabolic. Okay. So that's just my viewpoint, not financial advice. I could be totally freaking wrong. I don't think I am. I don't think I am wrong. I think I'm right. And I think 2025 is going to be an extraordinary year. So my advice moving forward is not financial. It's just knowledge. Start to learn about Bitcoin. Start to learn about MicroStrategy. Watch Michael Saylor. See what he's doing. A lot of people don't understand him. Don't listen to most news stations that interview him, because the people who interview him are looking off like a cue card, and they're like, oh, so that MicroStrategic. I'm exaggerating here, but I've heard some people call it MicroStrategies. It's not MicroStrategies, it's MicroStrategy. So you'll have a reporter reading something off a cue card, asking a question of something that most of the time they know nothing about, and they're asking a challenging question to create good news. And so they put things in people's minds like, so is MicroStrategy a Ponzi scheme? No, you idiot. It's not a Ponzi scheme, right? Why would you even ask the question, right? So if you knew anything about it, you wouldn't even ask the question. And so they put this stuff out in the media, right? Or it's sort of MicroStrategy, and you see headlines of Ponzi scheme, and it's just not true, man. Not true, okay? So go, reporters who are asking questions about whether it's a Ponzi scheme, go get educated and ask a more intelligent question about MicroStrategy so you actually know what you're asking, all right? Some of the news stations, like some of them, they ask some good questions. There's some that I like to follow that I'm like, oh, they're good. They're educated on Bitcoin. They know some things. Some other ones, they don't know a damn thing about what they're talking about. And they're asking questions, and ask it from a curious mindset to want to know what the thing is, not from a make wrong skeptical mindset. I would ask the questions and look for data. You don't have to drink the Kool-Aid, right? I would ask for data. I would look and I say, what are the facts? Like, how does Bitcoin actually work? Okay. What would happen if if Bitcoin, could the Bitcoin network get hacked? Okay, good question, right? I would want to know that security. So what else would you like? What is Bitcoin really, right? How does it have any value, right? Because it's not backed by anything. So how does it have any value? So explain to me how Bitcoin has value. Cool, that's a good question, right? Great. So 21 million coins. What does that really mean? Will there ever only be 21 million coins? Yes. The answer is yes. It's written into the protocol. Okay. There'll only be 21 million. Okay. Good questions, right? Good questions, people to ask. But like, come on. Is MicroStrategy a Ponzi scheme? No. And by the way, MicroStrategy, in terms of their leverage of leveraging debt, they're not doing anything that companies haven't done for the last hundreds of years. Okay. Like when you look at people who buy real estate, what do? Okay. They'll go to a bank, they'll go get a loan, right? They'll go get a loan, they'll go buy a building. Yeah. Right. That building goes up in value. They'll take some of the money that they made, where the building went up in value, and they'll roll it out and they'll buy another property. All right. So if you look at what MicroStrategy is doing on leverage, are they borrowing money? Yeah, they're borrowing money. It's one of the ways they're buying Bitcoin, right? When people go and buy real estate, do they borrow money? Yeah. Okay. Some people pay cash, but a good majority of people borrow money. So they borrow money, right? Borrow money, and they're going to buy Bitcoin. So this strategy of leverage and leveraging, because they're borrowing money and they're leveraging those dollars and they're buying Bitcoin with them, right? So this idea of leverage is not a new concept at all. So anyway, some of the principles of what they're doing as an organization, as a company, some of the principles have been around for hundreds of years. Okay. The thing that's new of why people don't understand is like they're buying Bitcoin, and then how do you value the company, and is it worth anything? And so most of that comes from the misunderstanding of like, what is Bitcoin first? And then you have a company that's buying Bitcoin. So first, go find out what Bitcoin is, ask those questions like I was talking about. But I would say come with a mind that's curious, that wants to know data, versus a mind that's skeptical. And yeah, do you have to be prudent? Do you have to be diligent? Do you have to look at data? Do you have to make smart decisions? Should you use logic? 100% you should, right? But, I think come with a mind that is curious to know, like, what is this thing really? Rather than sometimes people who don't understand it, they bash it. And, at the end of the day, I admire people because we all want to be right, So I never want to make somebody wrong about not investing in Bitcoin, or make them wrong about not knowing about Bitcoin, or make them wrong about anything, right? I just ultimately wanted to look at it and go, hey, just get some data on it. Get some knowledge on this thing. Understand it. If you have knowledge, you're going to have more control over the thing. And it's pretty much as simple as that. So go learn about it. Go ask some good questions about it. We have this many corporations getting involved. We have BlackRock, the largest institution on planet Earth in terms of finance, recommending that people put 1 to 2% of their portfolio in it. We have nations that have gotten involved in it. We have Tesla that has it on its balance sheet. We have MicroStrategy that owns the most amount. Do you really think that this thing, like the largest financial institution in the world, is going to get involved in buying Bitcoin? Like, if it's really like stupid and bad and like it's a terrible idea? No, I don't think so. I would be curious to go, what really is this thing? I want to understand more about it, and I would go find out. And certainly I was. And back in 2017 was when I first learned of it. And so I was curious about it. Bought my first one in 2018. So be curious. The future is here. We are in the world of the digital age, my friends. How could we not have a digital currency? And I think, and I do understand how this misunderstanding around money could confuse people, because our money system, our economy is extremely confusing. And I think it's designed that way, guys. I just do. I think it's designed in a way where it's tough for people to understand. And I think it's designed in that way to some degree purposely. And I think that our current economy has been manipulated way too much. And I think that this is really an opportunity with Bitcoin for a pure store of value. A pure store of value that has great properties to it. Right? Great properties to it. The fact that it's scarce and finite, the fact that I could transfer some to you right now in minutes. You know, the fact that it's 24/7, 365, you can access your Bitcoin. You know, what's it like on an institution today? Like, you know, some of these institutions, and, you know, blessed that people take their holidays, but I could go in the aftermarkets right now and trade in the stock market, but I can't trade on the weekends. You know? So the speed, if you look at the speed and the competitive advantage, and you look at an asset like Bitcoin, and you look at the speed of it, like, speed to me, like, speed is power. You know, speed is king, speed is queen. So if we can move something this fast, how is a antiquated financial system where you can't access your money on the weekends, or you can't send wires on the weekends, where they work what do they work 50% of the year they're open? And you look at these institutions to get your money out. If you want to wire money from an institution, try going to wire $100,000 from an institution, and wait till you get the questions, guys. What's the money for? Do you know this person? What are you using it for? That's my money. Why is it any of your business? So when you start to look at these things of how slow the banking system is, of also how non-transparent it is. It's not transparent. And you look at the amount of fraud that has existed in large financial companies because they doctor the books and they fudge their balance sheets. Wouldn't we all love to have something like Bitcoin, where every transaction that was ever made is stored and can never be changed? Like, wouldn't we want that transparency? So when you look at, like, when you compare the current banking system and the current money system to Bitcoin, there's no real comparison in terms of logic. Okay, I want to look at the dollar. I want to store my money in the dollar. Why would you store your money in the dollar? You're not going to put your money in the dollar long term. The dollar is going to lose 100% of its value over the next 100 years, almost 100%. You're not going to put your money in the dollar. Okay. Number two, the dollar isn't backed by anything. It's not backed by gold. We went off the gold standard in 1971. So it's not backed by gold. So if you look at the dollar and you go, I'd rather keep my money in cash, or like Bitcoin's not backed by anything, the dollar's not backed by anything. And you look at Bitcoin, what is it backed by? The difference is, with the dollar, you can print more. With Bitcoin, you can't. There's only going to be 21 million. So while the Fed has a button and they just push, and they automatically, hey, we're going to print more money. And they're going to have to keep printing more money. Okay, it's the only it's their way out right now. So they keep printing more money, and the dollar that you hold becomes less valuable. That's it. It's like, you imagine there was a supply of money, right? Let's take this. There's a supply of money, right? Okay. And like, the money is a pizza pie, right? It's an entire pizza pie. Yeah. And there's this big of a pizza in the world. That's all the money in the world. Okay. And you own a slice of the pizza. You got a slice, right? Okay. And so you have this pizza that big, and you got a slice of the pizza. That's how much money you have. But now, the pizza pie, instead of being that big, the pizza pie is this big. We just doubled the pizza pie. That's the money supply. Okay. Okay. Let's say, for argument's sake, let's say we didn't double it in the last 5 years. Let's say we increased the money supply by 60%. So your pizza pie was this big and now it's this big, but your slice is still the same size. So the value of your slice, would you rather have a slice this big of a pie that big? Or would you rather have a slice this big of a pie that big? I'd rather have a slice this big of a pie that big. And so your slice, it's like, man, what happened to my slice, dude? I can eat it in 2 bites. That sucks. Damn, my slice of pizza. I thought I was ready for this big piece of pizza I was going to eat. And I can eat in 2 bites because my damn slice is so small. My slice is so small because they printed so much damn money that your slice of pizza, your slice of money is smaller now just by sitting there in cash. It's smaller. And that's what's happening if you're relying on the dollar. And so if the money supply keeps growing, let me ask you this. The money supply keeps growing, the pizza keeps growing bigger, and your slice stays the same, or your slice gets marginally bigger, but how's your slice going to outpace it? How's it going to, that's cool, outpace it. How are you going to outpace it, right? How's your slice going to outpace it? How's it going to outpace it? How is it going to outpace it? The money supply keeps growing, they can keep printing, and you're earning to keep up in your hard-earned job, and you're like, okay, I'm going to put more money into this thing, into the dollar, into some bonds, and my slice is going to get a little bit bigger every year, but the money supply is going to get way bigger. You're never going to win. You're just not going to win. So logic would say, am I going to keep my money and keep investing in something where the pie just keeps growing and my slice keeps getting smaller? Or am I going to put my money into something like Bitcoin where the pie, in terms of the supply, is not getting bigger? It's only 21 million. That's it. 21 million coins. So 19 million of them are already issued. You only have 2 million more that are going to be issued, guys. That's it. So what do you think? What do you think is going to go up more in value? Your bonds that you hold that are growing at 5% a year when the money supply is growing so much that it's just your bonds, you're getting nothing. The S&P? Don't think so. What's going to do it? Where are you going to store your hard-earned money, right? The energy that you put out in the world to go out and produce this effect and create this effect and earn the money, all the skills and the tens of years, the 20 years that you've put time and energy into this to earn that dollar, and all of a sudden money gets printed and your dollar becomes less. So all the energy that you put in is shrinking because there's more money being printed. How do you feel about that? I don't feel too good about it. Which is why I started looking into Bitcoin, which is why I started investing in Bitcoin back in 2018. So where am I going to put my money? Okay. I'm not knowledgeable on real estate. I don't have the knowledge in it. I have it in Bitcoin. I have it in Microstrategy. I believe in these two things, so I invest in them. I don't have it in real estate. So I'm not going to go out and buy properties. Also, to me, it's a great thing for people who are doing it. I know people who have made billions doing it, and they're crushing it, and they're doing amazing, and it works for them. In a digital world, I got a hard time with that, going, man, I got to go through the paperwork and the transaction, or I could just get online and buy Bitcoin. If I'm going to go work and build my companies, I want to be able to store my money into something, go, boom. I'm storing the value that I'm creating in the world. I'm storing my value, which is monetary energy, right? The dollar, and I'm storing it into something that's actually going to accrete, that's going to go up in value over time. I'm not going to store into something that's not. And why am I going to put money in the S&P 500 going to 14% a year as a business owner? I'd rather put it back in my business. And so most of the public is, what is the option that most of the public is left with, guys? What's their option? Most of the public is sitting there left with the option of, like, I'm going to put money in a retirement plan. Yeah. Well, funny enough, some of these retirement plans in them, some of these retirement plans have Bitcoin in them now, right? Right, where you're buying into some of these ETFs. Some of these retirement plans, for those of you who are investing in the QQQ, which is the NASDAQ 100, the QQQ is a fund that mirrors the NASDAQ 100. So if any of your retirement funds have the QQQ in it, you're indirectly investing in MicroStrategy and you don't even know it, okay? If any of the funds hold it. But in the retirement accounts, to my point, like, people are investing. You had the whole old adage, like years ago, like when I was in the financial business, 21 years old. in the insurance business when I first got in, and then I got licensed to sell securities and things like that. And I'm looking at these financial products. And I'm like, dude, like, wait, why 10%? I don't get it. Why are we saying that people should get 10% a year and that's going to be a good deal? Like, why is that good? 10% a year? Well, if you put your money in and at 10% a year in the next 60 years, right? Or in 40 years when you retire, or 30 years when you retire, you're going to have a nest egg of this much, right? But what they don't tell you when you're investing in some of these retirement funds is two things. Number one, the first thing they don't tell you is you don't even know what you're investing in, man. Right? You don't even know what you're investing in half the time. I'm going to put my money into a retirement plan that has a bunch of different mutual funds in it. Mutual funds. I don't even know what the companies are. I could be investing in some company where they're issuing some drug that I don't even believe in. I could be investing in some company where I don't believe in the values of that company. Yet I throw my money on automatic pilot into this retirement fund of a bunch of companies I know nothing about. And the hope is that I'll get 10% over my lifetime. And then not to consider, but you should consider the 1% management fee that might be taken out per year, or the 0.5% management fee that's taken out per year, or some of the funds 1.5% that's being taken out. Go look at the fund fees. So now you're not getting 10%, but you're getting 10% minus 1%, and you're doing 9%. And look at the effect on a portfolio where 1% management fee is taken out a year every year for the next 30 years in a portfolio that's doing 10%. It will eat your returns away. Eat them. You might just think, no, 10%, they take a few 1%. I'm still earning 9%. Well, look at the difference, dude. Look, you're going to be shocked. Put it into your calculator. Ask ChatGPT. Go ask, what if I invested $100,000 into a mutual fund, and in 10 years or 20 years, or let's say 30 years, what would that grow to at 10%? And look at the number. And then look at the number. If I invest $100,000 and it's making 10%, but they're taking out a 1% management fee, what am I going to have in 30 years? Your amount that you will have in 30 years because of that 1% fee will be drastically less, my friend. Drastically less. So when you look at the alternative in the economy today, and trust me, in the financial business at 21 years old, I was looking at this stuff. I was looking at the fund sheets, and I was looking at the insurance stuff we were selling, the mutual funds we were selling, the annuities that we were selling. I'm like, I don't get it. What's up with this fee? And I put together a spreadsheet, and I'm looking at the fee at 21 years old. I'm looking at the damn fees, and I'm like, I don't get it. This product doesn't make sense to me. I don't get it. Why the fees? And then I'm like, 10%. We're telling people that they could potentially get 10%. Who wants 10%, dude? If the money, and this is what wasn't told, we didn't sit down with clients because I didn't know this shit at the time. We didn't sit down with clients, and we weren't sitting there and going, hey, Mr. Client, by the way, let me just tell you, okay, that our goal is to get you 10% a year. Do the math with me. Somebody take out a pen and piece of paper. We'll do this for fun. Do the math with me. Hey, Mr. Client, by the way, okay, our goal, Mr. Client, is to get you 10% a year in these mutual funds. Meanwhile, client doesn't even know what a mutual fund is, right? 10% a year into these mutual funds. It's invested in some of this, the large caps thing and the small cap thing here and some medium cap here. And you're going to do this great investor profile, and we're going to figure out what your risk tolerance is, all to get you to a good 10%, right? But maybe if your risk tolerance is lower, we'll get you to an 8%, right? Okay. So let's look at the scenarios, right? So you're sitting down with an advisor, like, we're going to get you 10%. Okay, great. 10%. Fantastic, right? But then let's look at the management fees. Oh, there's a 1% fee in there. Okay, great. So now I'm really getting 9%. And they give you this prospectus, right? The prospectus is like 900 pages long that nobody's going to read. You read the first line and you get a misunderstood word from the first line. You're like, what the hell are they talking about? First 3 words in, I don't know what they're talking about. I got to look up every damn word to see what the hell they're talking about. And you're reading this prospectus, 100 pages, like, I don't know what they're saying. What are they saying, right? So you're like, okay, the advisor's telling me I could get 10% over time. I'll invest in the mutual fund. There's a fee in there. I didn't really look at it. It might be 1%, so I'm going to get 9%, right? But here's what they didn't tell you, okay? They didn't tell you that since the dollar's been around, we've been printing almost 7% more money every single year. So if you're printing 7% more of something, imagine flying a plane, right? And like, okay, I'm flying a plane and I'm going 10 miles per hour. This is an exaggeration because you wouldn't fly a plane at 10 miles per hour. I'm going 10 miles per hour, man. You're flying the plane, right? And then you're like, oh yeah, but somebody told me that there's a wind coming in. So I'm trying to fly, let's say 10 miles per hour, but there's just wind coming in. And the wind, by the way, it's 7 miles per hour. And it's like, well, what's the wind? Well, the wind is like we print 7% more money every single year. I think on average it's 6.57% since the beginning of the dollar. So every year they print 6.57 more percent money every single year. 6.5, let's call it 7%, 7%, 7%, 7%, 7%, 7%. So here you are, you're flying like, all right, man, I'm going to my plane. I'm going 10 miles per hour, but you got a 7% headwind coming at you, which is the money supply. Oh, I'm going 10 miles per hour, man. I'm going 10 miles, but you got a 1% management fee. So my 7% money supply, my 1% management fee, maybe I'm at a net 2%. Maybe. At 10%, I'm barely keeping ahead, dude. I'm barely living at 10%, barely surviving. And people are walking around, they're going to the grocery store, they're like, damn, man, when did avocados get so expensive, man? Huh? Or I was sitting with a couple the other night at dinner, my girlfriend's brother, and they're sitting there like, yeah, man, we own this house in San Diego, and it's like $900 and something thousand. And like, man, the prices are crazy though. It's not worth $900,000. Right? Because I think the statistic I was hearing the other day, fact check what I'm saying so you get your own facts on it. But the statistics was, I think 4 to 5 years ago, the average American home was worth $240,000. And now today, the average American home is, I think it might have been $280,000 4 years ago or 5 years ago. And today, the average American home is now worth $480,000 or $440,000. That's crazy, man. Right? Crazy. So like asset prices are going up, right? Like, things are more expensive, man. So it's like, yeah, we can sit here and go, oh, yeah, okay, well, you know, the inflation is just going up by 2.5% a year. And it looks like we're going to have a good year because it's 2.5%. And sure thing, the economy's in good shape because we're 2.5% a year. What, dude? Come on, man. You're printing 7% more money a year. Your fund manager taking 1% of my damn money. You tell me I got to earn 10%. I'm barely at 2%, man. And then if I want to go buy avocados, the 2% that I'm making on my money that I'm making 10% on because I got the headwind of 7 miles per hour, which is the printing of money, which, by the way, that's a good freaking year, 7%. If you look at 2020, 2021, 2022, 42% more money printed in 3 years, 14% a year. So look at those years in 2020. Okay, 2020, if I was earning 10% and we printed 14% more money, I'm earning negative 4%, man. 2021, I'm earning 10% of my mutual funds, but the money supply went up by 14%. I'm earning negative 4%. Make sense? If I'm sitting in cash, man, if I'm sitting in cash during COVID, because I'm afraid I was not sitting in cash, man. I was in Bitcoin. But I'm sitting in cash during COVID, and I'm sitting there and I'm watching. I'm going to keep, my $10,000 in the bank here, right? And know that they're printing 14% more money. That $10,000 3 years later was worth 40% less, man. That $10,000 is worth like $6,000 now. And we got some people who spent their lifetime, hard-earned money, saving up 10 grand or 100 grand or $1 million. And now all of a sudden, 3 years later, the money supply went up by 42%. And so my $1 million, it really ain't worth $1 million anymore. It's worth about 42% less. It's worth more like 600,000. And then you go to the grocery store, you're like, hey, mister, I'd like to get some avocados. Avocados? When did avocados get so expensive? Steak, man. You go to a restaurant now, it's like steak, a really top restaurant. What are you charging for a filet mignon? Freaking $90 at some places right now. I mean, what kind of cocaine are you smoking, man? Right? Like, so the inflation rate, it ain't 2%, man. It ain't 2.5%. You're going to have your economist, Jerome Powell, come on and tell you what the inflation numbers are today, and here's what's happening in the economy. It ain't 2%, man. Okay? Because of the printing of money. So how are you going to beat it? How are you going to beat it? If you're a real estate mogul and you know what you're doing, you're going to beat it because you're going to outbeat it with real estate, and you're going to have tax benefits by doing real estate if you know that game. And again, that's a physical world. You got to go out. You got to look at the deals, look at the properties, all these things you need to go through. Great. So if you're a master of real estate, you're going to crush it. You ain't going to crush it in the S&P. You ain't going to crush it in bonds. You ain't going to crush it sitting in cash. And I don't know, man. Like if you think gold's going to do it, okay, go for it, right? You think gold's going to do it? You want to hold your money in gold, Like Michael Saylor says, it's like wooden ships were a great idea until we invented steel. Like bow and arrows were a really good deal in a fight when you're going to fight with a bow and arrow until somebody comes out, like my buddy we were talking last night, he's got a Glock and it's sitting right there in your face, right? Like, who's going to win? The guy with the bow and arrow or the guy with the gun? I don't know, man. Right? So gold's been great. And can it continue to be a good store of value? Yes. Is it going to be a superior store of value over time in a digital world? No, it's not. It's just not. Can it continue to be a good store of value? Sure. But hell, we're printing 2 to 3% more gold every year, not printing mining. So the supply of gold's going up by 2 to 3% every year. So if the supply of something continues to go up, my friends, the value of the thing you hold will go down, period. Why do you think you walk into Gucci or Louis Vuitton and you go in there and they're like, we only have one bag left. Pay me $94,000 for the bag. like, right? Not one bag yet left. I wonder where that thing was made, man. Probably wasn't even made in the US. You know, you got 24 of those bags behind the counter somewhere. You don't got one bag left. The scarcity of it increases the demand for it, so the price goes up. Right? Simple. But if we're sitting here, we're going, hey, if the supply goes up, if all of a sudden there's 5 Louis Vuitton bags out, or there's 15, and somebody's seen them everywhere, and there's 15, that price ain't going to be so damn high in that store. Because people want the thing that's scarce, because inherently they know the thing that's scarce has value. Okay? And it's not that gold isn't scarce, it's just not finite, man. It's not. 2 to 3% more gold is mined every single year. So that means that the value of gold over time will lose its value. It will. It will lose a percentage of its value over time. Will Bitcoin lose its value over time? You can't make more Bitcoin. You can't. You can make more real estate. Is it scarce in some places? Yeah. That's why you go to places, certain places of real estate here in Los Angeles, the property values are super high, right? Because there's scarce amount of property available in Los Angeles, but across the world, there's plenty of property. So is it scarce to some degree? Yeah, but is there more supply of it? Yeah, there is. After 21 million Bitcoin, there ain't going to be any more, man. What other asset can you say that about? You ain't going to say it about diamonds. I mean, there's probably such a huge supply of diamonds in the world, but what do? They're not showing you the millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars of these store having diamonds. No, they're issuing the one thing that's sitting out there with this nice yellow diamond at Tiffany's, and there's only one that's showing. They have tons of it, man. Tons. It ain't scarce. It's the appearance that it's scarce. Okay? So, but Bitcoin, does it have the appearance of scarcity? No, it is scarce. And am I saying that diamonds are in abundance all across the world? No. But am I saying that they're in more of abundance than it appears that they are? Yes. Okay. And gold, is there more abundance of gold than there appears that there is? Yeah, there is, because they're mining 2 to 3% more every year. So when you look at Bitcoin, you get what you see. And most people go, well, I can't see it. I can't touch it. But you get what you see because there's only 21 million. So in this case, you get what you can't see. You can't see the 21 million. It's there. It's written into the protocol, guys. That's how it works. That's how it operates. So what are you going to own? You're going to bet your future on the digital landscape where technology is only advancing more and more. AI is advancing more and more. The digital world is advancing more and more. To think that we will not have a digital monetary system is foolish. Okay? It's here. And it's called Bitcoin. All right. Hope it serves you. Have an incredible new year. Again, get educated on it. This is only for knowledge purposes. I'm not saying go buy anything at all. I'm saying go get knowledgeable on it, have fun with it, enjoy it. Enjoy learning about this great technology, this great future, this great new monetary system. Hope it serves you. Have an incredible new year. You guys are amazing. Stay well. See you on the next one.